This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Monday, April 12, 2021. I'm Ephraim Graham. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin this half hour with this. Call it pay to stay away. There is a new report the Biden administration is so desperate to stop the border surge, it is looking at a plan to pay Central American governments in economic assistance. Meanwhile, migrants at the border have hit new records. Dale Hurt has the story.
The situation is so bad at the southern border that the Department of Health and Human Services has reportedly asked workers at other federal agencies to volunteer to go to the border to help care for the thousands of illegal immigrant children being held there. The border surge is breaking records. Over 172,000 migrants were stopped at the border last month, the most in 20 years. And almost 21,000 unaccompanied minors taken into federal custody, the most ever. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says we're seeing the consequences of the Democrats' rhetoric on open borders and Joe Biden's policies.
If you go back to the Democrat presidential debates, every single one of the Democrat candidates said if they are elected, they will have open borders and they will be giving things for free to anybody coming across the border. This problem will continue to get worse because of the policies that have been adopted by the Biden administration.
Abbott points out that even some Democrats are pushing back against the Biden White House. And he says what would stop the surge would be a return to the border policies of the Trump administration. Instead, Reuters reports the Biden administration is now considering cash payouts to some Central American nations to try to improve economic conditions to help stem the surge at the border. Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy blasted the idea, tweeting, "President Biden wants to try and buy our way out of his border crisis with taxpayer money. The administration is spending $60 million a week and now wants to launch a cash transfer program in Central America. This insults millions of Americans who are out of work in our country." And while Joe Biden put Kamala Harris in charge of fixing the border crisis nearly 3 weeks ago, she still hasn't held a press conference or even visited the border to see what's happening there firsthand. Dale Hurt, CBN News.
The unfolding human tragedy along the U.S. southern border is also getting attention from transnational drug cartels. CBN News contributing correspondent Chuck Holton reports they're taking advantage of the chaos.
Every day, boats arrive here in the tiny Colombian border town of Capurganá. But these aren't tourists. They're migrants from all across the globe.
Most of them are from Africa, Pakistan, India, and Haiti, and some Cubans. It's a humanitarian crisis.
What should be an out-of-the-way fishing village has become the last off-ramp on a human trafficking highway that plunges right through the forbidding Darien Gap. These migrants aren't customers, they're products. And their desire to make it to the U.S. means big profits for the smugglers who send them into the jungle.
You know, I don't like to talk too loudly around here, but basically that's what they do. They pay the young kids here to be the mules. They take them over the mountains or through the, to the San Blas.
But there's another commodity here that's even more profitable: cocaine. This country has always been the #1 exporter of this illicit drug, but the amount being grown in Colombia today is near an all-time high.
With President Uribe, we got as small as 40,000 hectares. With President Santos, who sold to the world that he was the peace maker, we get into 300,000 hectares.
Eradication efforts haven't been as effective in recent years due to concerns about the health risks of spraying coca fields from the air. So Colombia has had to resort to methods which are less effective and much more dangerous.
We have 16 soldiers, policemen, and eradicators killed by mines because the guerrilla put mines everywhere around.
So I wanted to try and track this group of migrants we watched go into the Darien Gap on the Colombian side when they came out the other end. So I took a quick flight to Panama, and now I'm driving down to the Darien Gap on this side to try to meet them. And I think I figured out how these drug runners are taking advantage of the flow of migrants to move their product north. What they do is get local Colombian guys to put on backpacks full of cocaine, and then they salt them in with the migrants. That's because the migrants are getting preferential treatment from immigration officials at the border. See, the border's actually closed, but Colombian immigration officials told me they're being instructed to look the other way when the migrants come through. And so in that way, these guys can get their drugs north without being stopped at the border. I made it to the camp where the migrants were being kept, but wasn't allowed to enter because of COVID restrictions. I did manage to get through on the phone to a 16-year-old Haitian migrant named Madesi.
Many people died. One woman drowned and 2 other men lost their wives. Many people died.
In all, 12 of the 70 or so migrants we witnessed at the start of their journey did not survive, including this 10-month-old baby who succumbed to dysentery. In addition, Madesi told me the entire group was robbed at gunpoint and at least a dozen women were raped by cartel members. But the migrants keep coming. Locals say the number is up 4-fold in the last 2 months. The flow of cocaine is keeping pace as well. Panama seized more than 1.5 tons a week for the past year. But while the cartels have to evade authorities to move their drugs, the flow of people is much easier because the migrants get support from local governments as they transit Central America. Victor Avila is a former ICE agent.
The cartels have taken over. We used to have the human traffickers and the human smugglers and the drug traffickers. That no longer exists. It's now all the cartels. You will encounter the cartels. You will have to pay the piso, the plaza, the quota to them, whether you're going to turn yourself in or not. These people are paying $3,500, $4,000 a head to even turn themselves in to seek asylum.
So whether it's Haitians or heroin, Cubans or cocaine, the narcos are getting rich either way. From Panama, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas is recovering from eye surgery. He issued a statement saying a few days ago he noticed some blurry dark spots in his vision and went to an ophthalmologist. Doctors discovered his retina was detaching from his left eye. Crenshaw is a war veteran and he lost his other eye while serving in Afghanistan. He said what was happening with his only remaining good eye was terrifying. He said his wife was by his side and he appreciates all the prayers for his full recovery. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 to lift in-home religious restrictions in California. Governor Gavin Newsom has been accused of religious discrimination in this case. The ruling stated before limitations are implemented, the government must prove religious gatherings present a greater risk than secular activities, such as shopping or attending the movies. For more on this story, you can visit our website at cbnnews.com. An attorney for a Canadian church rebuked the government for placing a barrier around Grace Life Church and for seeking to delay the government's trial against its pastor. All of this stems from Grace Life Church violating pandemic lockdowns. John Carpe, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, argued the government has known for many months it would be called to make the case in court for its lockdowns and restrictions. He also said freedom of conscience and religion is the first fundamental freedom listed in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It is listed first because it is one of the key bedrock principles on which Canada is built. Faith Wire's Trey Phillips joins us now with the latest on the Grace Life Church situation. So, Trey, you've been following the story with Grace Life. What is the latest?
So, like you mentioned, they put up a barricade in the middle of last week, kind of unbeknownst to the church. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police went in at the behest of the Alberta Health Services and put up a 3-layer chain link fence barricade around the church. And on Sunday, yesterday morning, the parishioners of Grace Life went in and just took down the barricade and started to go into the church. The police met them there, blocked off access to the road so more people couldn't get in. And ultimately, they ended up holding a worship service of about 300 to 400 congregants just outside around the church, moving forward with their worship service despite this consistent and constant government pushback.
Now, Trey, there are many in Canada as well as right here in the United States concerned about the lengths the government has gone in this case. Where do you think the law stands? The attorney for the church says it's on its side. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that is the case. Obviously, Canadian law is different than our law here in the United States, and then we obviously have different, local legislation. So Canada operates a little bit differently, and their provinces operate a little bit differently. But ultimately, still, as a Western country, as our neighbor to the north, they still, of course, value religious freedom. So ultimately, I think the law is on their side. The law does give the government a bit more control than Americans here would be comfortable with, but ultimately I do think that the attorney for the church is correct, that legally at the end of the day, regardless of how this case moves forward, religious liberty laws are on the side of the church.
So what's happening now with the pastor's case?
So the government, despite what I just said about the religious liberty laws, they are still a lot more restrictive there than they are in a lot of places here in the U.S. as far as COVID is concerned. That was why we saw Pastor Coates imprisoned in the first place. He refused to comply with a 15% capacity max on church attendance and occupancy for services, among other things. So the state now, or the province now, the provincial government is trying to delay his trial. It's originally scheduled, or currently scheduled, for May 3rd through 5th. The government is trying to delay it because they said they haven't had enough time to come up with a legal case for why they need to keep these COVID restrictions in place. And like you mentioned, the attorneys argued you've had a year now to make the case for why these are required for health reasons. Why do you need more time? Has been the church's argument.
Real quick, you mentioned there were protests of the government at the church on Sunday. Are they seeing more people rise up in defense of the church's rights and their rights in face of the restrictions overall?
Yeah, in the United States, John MacArthur over the weekend came out, obviously a pastor in California, but also we're seeing just local Albertans in the province in Canada coming out and starting to rally around the church, join with the congregation and protest, even if they're not believers, saying what's happening here is wrong.
All right, Trey Goins, Phillips with faithwire.com. Thank you so much for updating us on this story. I want to remind you at home that you can watch Faith versus Culture on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Coming up, a mysterious hit on Iran's nuclear facility's power supply and who the rogue nation believes is behind it. We've got that story for you coming up right here on CBN NewsWatch. We'll be right back.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Iran's key nuclear facility mysteriously lost power Sunday. That damaged Iran's ability to enrich uranium. As Chris Mitchell now reports, it is raising the stakes significantly between the Jewish state and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Iran is blaming Israel for the attack, and a leading Iranian official is warning of war.
We want to say very frankly to all those who want to implement sabotages on us that if they attempted to start wars, Iran would not keep silent.
According to the New York Times, the power outage at the Natanz nuclear facility set back Iran's nuclear program at least 9 months. Israeli media is reporting the Mossad is behind a cyber attack that damaged advanced centrifuges just hours after they went online. Last July, Iran blamed Israel for an explosion that severely damaged this facility. Sunday's incident raises the stakes in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. Another confrontation is taking place on the high seas. Israel attacked an Iranian ship off the coast of Yemen recently, while Iran hit an Israeli vessel a few weeks ago. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu encouraged the Israel Defense Forces to continue its battle against Iran.
The fight against Iran and its proxies, the fight against Iran's nuclear program, the fight against Iran's nuclearization is a huge task. And I wish all of us that you continue on this path and that you continue to keep the sword of David, in your hands.
Here in Israel, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met with both Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Benny Gantz.
The Tehran of today poses a strategic threat to international security, to the entire Middle East, and to the state of Israel.
During our meeting, I reaffirmed to Minister Gantz our commitment to Israel is enduring and it is ironclad.
While the fight between Israel and Iran grows, negotiations in Vienna between Iran and the 5 nations that signed the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal continue. The talks are designed to help the U.S. re-enter the Iranian nuclear deal. Iran demands the U.S. act first by removing sanctions before it will agree to make any moves limiting its nuclear advancement. Last week on Holocaust Remembrance Day, Prime Minister Netanyahu declared Israel would not be bound by any nuclear deal. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, it is much more than a marketing slogan when it comes to eating just one potato chip or other snacks and processed foods. The science behind the cravings. We've got the story for you coming up right after this.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Have you ever wondered why it is so hard to eat just one chip or cookie? And why do so many of us find processed foods irresistible? Well, there's a good reason. Food companies actually engineer them to be addictive. So just how do they get you hooked? Medical reporter Lori Johnson explains.
Processed foods barely existed just 50 years ago and now rake in $1.5 trillion each year. So why do these products make up 90% of what's on our grocery store shelves and comprise 3/4 of our daily calorie intake?
I've been crawling through the underbelly of the processed food industry for 10 years now, and I continue to be shocked by the level of their cunning deviousness, if you will, and being able to sort of figure out what draws us to their products to make us want not just like them, but want more and more. And of course,
in his book, Hooked, investigative journalist Michael Moss claims food companies make their products addictive by taking advantage of our weaknesses.
Biologically, these deep instincts we have make us incredibly vulnerable to overeating.
Bodies naturally crave sugar, fat, and salt. And processed foods are packed with highly condensed amounts, much more than we use in home cooking.
They get the brain excited, and it sends a signal saying, wow, Michael, I love that. Can I have some more of that?
And to feed that craving, food manufacturers can add some 56 different types of sugar to their products, creating an expectation that everything we consume should taste sweet.
Our brain doesn't say, wait a minute. Michael, you just ate 2,000 calories in that snack bag. Stop, wait a minute. Your brain is kind of put to sleep and it's going, okay, let's have some more. Great taste.
Getting us hooked on great taste is only the beginning. The processed food industry also spends a lot of time and money engineering just the right texture. If a food feels good in our mouth, we'll want more. They make feeding that desire easy, too, because of the low cost.
But it's also something that sends that signal to the brain, wow, I love cheapness of this food. I want more of it.
Food manufacturers understand we get excited by anything new, so they constantly add to an already wide variety, knowing it's nearly impossible to resist all the choices.
It's called the smorgasbord effect, and it's why you can eat at a smorgasbord, fill up until you're stuffed, but then look down the table and see something new and go, okay, I can fit that in.
There's also that devious aspect Moss mentioned. These food giants take advantage of our desire to feel like we're making healthy choices. So believe it or not, they also make some of our most popular diet foods.
But really, when you looked at the ingredients and the nutrition, weren't all that different from their full-calorie foods.
Plastering buzzwords like protein and fiber on packages can also mislead.
And so they're adding protein to sugary cereal that's still probably not so healthy for you. They're putting in lots of fiber in products and touting that on the front of the label, even though a lot of that fiber really doesn't work to fill you up like fiber should.
And finally, food companies exploit our desire to make eating easy.
Convenience is another one of those big driving forces.
So now that we understand the processed food industry's tactics, how do we defend ourselves?
You can start by cooking at home from scratch. But don't worry, it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. For example, it only takes 5 minutes to cook this fish on the stove while microwaving this sweet potato.
Eat foods that closely resemble their natural form, also known as whole foods, paying particular attention to ones in the produce department. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, why one worship leader believes revival is coming to America. Stay with us.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, A new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Let us worship leader Sean Foyt received the William J. Seymour Award, an honor given to leaders in ministry who exhibit the characteristics of the late bishop. Past recipients include Lou Engle, Bishop T.D. Jakes, and the late Dr. Miles Monroe. Foyt has been traveling the nation with his worship events and helping to lead revivals wherever he goes. Foyt says since the start of the pandemic, his heart has been on revival, and he is not backing down from officials who've tried to shut down his events or big tech that has tried to stop his music. He told CBN News he believes there's a calling on believers to obey God rather than man. But at the end of the day, he just wants to see revival in our nation. He posted on Instagram from a Tennessee event, "Repentance and revival is the only hope for our nation. Politics won't do it, brands can't do it, social justice alone isn't the answer. Good works is always a dead end. The answer is only found in Jesus." Time now for your Monday motivation, and today I want to leave you with this message as we embark upon yet a new week. God makes the impossible possible. Miracles aren't rare for him, they're routine. It's a good idea to trust him with everything we can't understand and everything we can't handle. Scripture says to cast all your cares on him because he cares for you. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time and online at cbnnews.com. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.